and Emily over in Cleveland, Minnesota. Over my past history, I spent 10 years in ag retail, working with producers just like yourselves with seed chemical and fertilizer. Since then, I left that to go farming full time and decided I really missed that agronomy touch with other farmers and the passion that I have about trying to grow big, profitable business. I throw the profitable part in here because this is the main goal. Okay, so pick back up. Thank you for that. After leaving my job in ag retail and I go home and farm, I did that for about a year and realized I just missed that touch with agronomy. So from there, I decided to start up a agronomy consulting business working with farmers like yourselves, and it really brings a passion of mine back to the people that I work with. So, by show of hands, let's see who's brave enough to do this in the bank meeting. Who's been worried over the last couple of months about their profitability in 2025? There's a few brave people in here, admit it. I think it's on all of our minds, right? So, in this presentation, we're going to talk about a couple things over the next minute or two. What's it going to take to be successful in 2025? Perfect weather, perfect government policy, great exports, another dollar in December corn futures, and cheaper inputs. Solves the problem, right? That's a good joke. At least I thought it was when I was making this. So, in all actuality, how are we going to be successful in 2025? So, for me, there's a lot of things that any operation can do to really try to bring the next level of profitability to their farm. But a few things that stick out in my mind is to focus on what we control. Reduce the impacts of the weather extremes. We talked a little bit earlier tonight about what you can do from an insurance and marketing standpoint to try to weather some of those economic storms. So we'll talk a little bit about the agronomy storms and how we weather them from a weather standpoint. Another big one is knowing your numbers. So maybe by show of hands, who in here knows their break even at their APH today? So they can make appropriate marketing decisions. They're a pretty good handful. Thank you for that. What I found over the last 15 years of working with producers is that that's a pretty foggy number. And I understand there's a lot of variables that go into that, but one thing I'll talk about here tonight is how do you better understand your numbers so when you're planting corn in a month or two, a couple months, and the market's rallying because there's weather scares in Indiana and Illinois, because we all know those weather scares aren't going to happen here. So when you're planting corn, the market's rallying, you can make the decision, when do I need to pull the trigger on that? And then the last thing I'll talk about is how do you rely on your team, the folks that you work with on a day-to-day basis in your operation, from your lenders, insurance, crop input providers, and the like. How do you work with them to create a scenario where it's a 1 + 1 = 3? So by that I mean synergy. How do you take the efforts of your top 6 board of directors on your farm and turn that into something more? So to start off, just a little bit talking about weather and how we use agronomy tactics to try to lessen the impact that I would say, inclement weather has on your operation. So this is a March, April, May forecast from BAM Weather talking about precipitation and temperatures. So this is a March, April, May forecast. So for the average of March, April, and May, they're talking about above normal precipitation right in our area, right on the edge. So we're on the western edge of that. And they're talking, we fall smack in the middle of below normal temperatures. That's really conducive to growing great corn, right? And it almost has flashbacks to last spring, in my opinion. So, with that being said, I know there was some good corn yields within some of the folks that are in this room, and there were some people that probably struggled from a moisture standpoint. Is there any one thing, and you don't have to raise your hands or shout out, but think in your minds, is there any 1 or 2 things looking back on how you managed your operation from an agronomy standpoint in 2024 that you would maybe change based on what you found? From a nitrogen standpoint, how hard do you push the planter with the rain coming ahead? Things like that. So, and that's just a little touch on the weather, and then you can kind of set the mindset of how do we make the decisions on paper today or over the last couple of months to really try to lessen the effects of weather coming up forward in the next growing season. So what I'm going to talk about is along those lines when making these decisions, and I understand a lot of them are probably made, hopefully, for this coming growing season from a agronomy input standpoint. But what I'm going to talk about is the difference, both agronomically and economically, on a cutting type of scenario? Has anyone in the room thought about cutting something out of their agronomic plan for 2025 because of costs or economies? I know there's probably a few. We've all thought in our minds, hey, we should cut out this, or maybe we shouldn't do this. Less P&K, things of that nature. Versus what I would consider a moderate plan. So I'm gonna target fertility for tonight's sake and for the sake of time. So your top example is kind of what I call a common southern Minnesota plan. You're gonna put 220 pounds of anhydrous out there, 100 pounds of P, 100 pounds of K, 25 pounds of sulfur, and you're gonna pay for 2 applications, all in the fall. The out-the-door price for that is $165 an acre, $165.25. I say that's a common southern Minnesota plan because you see it a lot, and it checks all the boxes. You got your nitrogen, you got a little bit of P&K out there. It's probably reasonable to shoot for that amount of P&K based on the economies of what the prices are for both corn and the fertilizer product that you have to buy. Now going down to the moderately, what I'll call the moderately aggressive fertilizer plan. I switched it up a little bit. I still say with fall application, I go 260 pounds of urea, stabilize. I use 150 pounds of Micro Essentials SZ, look at a different form or different phos-based product, 130 pounds of potash, a little less elemental sulfur, and 1 application in the fall. So I cut out 1 fall application in this situation, and I take that extra application that we would have used for the toolbar, put it in the spring with 100 pounds of ESN and 100 pounds of AMS. It's a little more, I should say, it's more products that you're putting out there, but at the end of the day, you got the same amount of nitrogen, you're putting on 14 pounds more phos and 28 more pounds of potash, but in this program, you're using 31 more pounds of sulfur as sulfate versus the traditional fall program that I see a lot. So what does that all mean? So at the end of the day, we're putting on the same amount of nitrogen, we're splitting it up over 3 different times instead of 1, or 3 different products at 2 different times instead of 1 product, 1 time in the fall. We're putting on a little more P&K and more sulfur that's going to help you use more of that nitrogen you're going to apply no matter how you apply it. So whether you apply it in the fall as anhydrous, in the spring as urea, it's 32%. By putting on more sulfur, so in my opinion, I like to see sulfur in a 1 pound of sulfur to 12 to 14 pounds of nitrogen to help that nitrogen become more usable to the plant. So by doing those extra things, you're spending $54 an acre on fertilizer, more than you would have been. Who wants to do that? Nobody, okay? So let's take a look at what it actually means. So I know this is a little hard to read for folks in the back, but what you're looking at is a breakdown of what I'll call the base management for corn and the moderately aggressive management plan for corn. So I added seed, chemical, and a few other things to have a conversation on what we just talked about, $54 extra dollars of fertilizer. So in the base program, you're going to plant a 5-year-old double pro for $115 an acre. I put the $165 of base management fertilizer. When I compare that to the gold management or the moderate management plan, I'm going to plant a 2-year-old Smart Stacks corn. Extra $15 an acre. We're going to spend the extra $54 on fertilizer. On the chemical side of things, we're going to compare no fungicide and no foliar nutrition to adding a fungicide of a tassel with a foliar B5 application of zinc. For the custom hire on your budget, I added $10 to play for the plane. I added $5 an acre in operating interest because we're spending more on fertilizer. We're going to buy more fungicide and buy more expensive seed. So the base plan versus the moderate plan, we're going to add $117 an acre in cost to your budget for 2025. What does that mean? Because that sounds like something I don't want to do. More so back in December when you were making these plans. Since then, markets rallied 45 cents or so. It makes it a little more palatable. But at the end of the day, in an environment where there's a lot of unknowns, you probably don't want to do that. But let's take a look at what it may mean. So over my 15 years of experience working with growers all over a 7 or 8 county area, when I compare people who use more of a modern approach to fertilizer versus a based approach, I see approximately a 20 bushel gain to that $54 extra of fertilizer. On the seed standpoint, going with more advanced or newer genetics versus older stuff, we're going to call that 5 bushels an acre. The average fungicide response I see across all the boards is a 15 bushel response. Foliar zinc is 5 bushel. In my opinion, the base versus the goal is a 45 bushel change, or difference. So, where does that lead us from a profitability standpoint? So, goal is on the left on this time, or the moderately aggressive management plan. So, that yields 240 bushel an acre. Future price when I made this was $4.78, 20-cent basis, $4.58 price for cash. I add in, or I subtract off the operating expenses, the land costs, family living on a 500-acre farm, leaves me with $29,890 after paying for every expense in this scenario. So that pays for your family living, pays all your debts, pays all your expenses. That's not very good, is it? Now let's take a look at the base management strategy where we saved $117 an acre by either cutting or just outright not doing a lot of the extra things like fertilizer, fungicide, and things like that. You end up with 195 bushel yield, same futures price, same cash price. You subtract off the operating expense, family living, land costs, you end up with negative $14,170. So the savings you had by not taking a look at doing the 1 or 2 or 3, 4 extra things to raise more bushels on your farm, you end up with a $59 gain, return on your investment per acre, versus a $28 loss. That's 80-some dollars an acre that you could have put in your pocket for 2025. Any questions so far on any of this talk? So these are just a few examples of things that farms do, or I see farms do on any given year to try to make more profitable bushels for their farm. Any questions at this point? Any questions on how the math works out?
What happens if the weather is like last year?
So,
boom, 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 boom.
I agree. So, in a situation where the weather plays to our hand, where the weather's favorable for the year, I think you could see more than 45 bushel. If the weather's acutely against you, like for a lot of people it was in 2024, 45 may be a stretch, but I would pretty handsomely put my money on the fact that it's going to be at least 30 to 35 on this example. So in the areas that I work and the people that I work with across now is about 3 counties. 3 counties and about 100 miles from one side to the other. I had people that were what I would call in the basic plan versus people that were spending the extra $100 to $130, $40 an acre. The spread still on a year like 2024 was a strong 40 bushel. But it's a fair question to ask. Now this is just one cog in the wheel of a management strategy. If you decide that for your operation it's worth taking a look at doing something to try to add those bushels, that comes with a conversation that you have to have with your lender about making sure you got the operating capacity on the note to be able to handle that if you don't have the cash to front it. That comes to have a conversation with your crop insurance agent. So if you were running a basic plan and didn't have the extra upfront costs, just outright buying 80 or 85% might be enough. But if you are confident in your abilities in the ground that you farm to be able to push for the extra 20, 30, 40, or 50 bushels in corn, which is real, that, in my opinion, warrants a conversation with the crop insurance agent to say, here is my strategy, here's what I'm shooting for, so they can tailor their presentation to you and your operation for that. Because that helps them tailor what are they looking for. So if you were to look at going for 200, say you're going to shoot for something that's 20 to 30 bushel over your APH, I think that drastically changes their approach to your operation and how they want to sign you up. I really think it does. Thank you for the question. Any other questions or thoughts so far? So that's a lot of product talk and pound talk and dollars. How about knowing your numbers? So growing more bushels is fantastic and all, but at the end of the day, if you don't know what your cost is per bushel, how do you market that? Because I can help you get all the bushels, or you can help your agronomist that you work with can help you get all the extra bushels in the world. But at the end of the day, marketing for an extra 20 or 30 or 40 cents versus the next person negates all that. You can really, really compound your gains as an operation by doing that. So in my opinion, knowing your numbers is very important. And tracking your expenses for field. So what I see a lot of times is there's farms that have fields that they work on that they maybe shouldn't be from a profitability standpoint. We all have that farm that we probably paid too much for when we bought it 10 years ago and it doesn't quite produce like it does. But we also have those farms that really crank the profitability. And in my opinion, it takes an average of all those farms to make your farm average what it is. But it's also good to help you understand if I wanted to go back to a program like this where I'm going to spend that extra $120 an acre, I maybe don't want to do that on my bottom 20 or 30% of my fields because they have drainage issues, they have soil type issues. So that's where tracking those expenses by field really helps you understand your field level profitability. So this is a really small example, and there's people that you can work with, and I think that your lender here in the room, or even your crop insurance agent can help you put in touch or help you figure this out on what your break-evens are per field. So in this specific example, this grower's got 6 fields with varying yields, so from the 210 to 250 bushel field averages, and they've got break-even per bushels at that level anywhere from 504 down to 357. So when looking at that, that's a pretty wide range of break-even per bushel per field. And what I see when I see that big of a range, I see cloudiness in numbers. So I guess my take-home message on this part here is really work to understand where your field level profitability is, which makes your full operation profitability and break-even levels that much more crystal clear. Because I see a lot of times where the grower might know exactly what his seed costs are, exactly what their fertilizer costs are. Those are really easy because they come on an invoice every month. You can tally that up. That's pretty easy to do on something as simple as a legal pad. But where I see people run into trouble is they don't understand all their other operational costs, what they have tied up in equipment, how much does it cost, or so a good one that I think of is who's got a repair and maintenance budget, where at the end of the year when they do their math, they go, holy buckets, I blew that out of the water by 30 or 40%. That's a very common one that I see that you can track throughout the year as well that helps you understand these numbers too. And the third thing that I want to mention here to really be constructive and profitable in 2025 is relying on your team. And when I say team, I'm talking about people like your spouse, people like your farm partner, your children if they're involved, your financer, your bank, your loan officer, crop insurance, equipment people, ag input providers. So when you meet with those people, I guess I would challenge you to challenge them and yourself to create an environment where you're really working towards a common goal, not I have to go buy some fertilizer today, or I have to go buy my seed or sign up my crop insurance today. I challenge you to go into those conversations with the fact that I want to leverage my input, their input, to come out with a solution that's 2 or 3 times what we could have by ourselves. Because at the end of the day, we all rely on what I call a board of directors for our farm, and really leverage what they can bring to the table. And I'll end with a quote on teamwork here that really, I think, drives home the 1 + 1 = 3 concept, where the ability to work together towards a common vision, the ability to direct individual accomplishments towards organizational objectives, or in this case, your farm's objectives, is a fuel that allows common people to attain uncommon results. And I think that the people in this room are very capable of that, because I know the people, a lot of them that you're working with in this area, are very capable of helping you, and I think that you can really drive forward to a really profitable and strong 2025.
So my name is J.D. Sherman, and this is Matt Buckingham. We work together for our little branch in Minnesota for advanced training, and we are excited to be here. Citizens, thank you for asking us to be here. Just going to do kind of a quick overview of some stuff that's going on in the markets. A little background about Matt and I went to high school in Benson, Minnesota. Grew up on a farm called Danvers, a little town called Danvers, tiny town. I was the worst farmer in the county. My brother was 6 years older. He took over the farm. I always joke that I would have been a millionaire if I would have been allowed to farm. I would have needed $1 billion to start, but I would have been a millionaire farmer. So I get to farm on paper because I was not, when I left, it was like hiring two good men. Matt grew up on a farm outside of West Concord, kind of between Owatonna and Rochester area. And I work in my office in Northfield, and Matt is in Zumbrota. So that's a little bit about our background. We both have farming backgrounds. Advanced Trading as a company, we were founded in 1980. We give non-predictive advice. I have no idea where the markets are going, you guys. I'm sure you'd like to have someone up here that does. Good luck finding them, right? These markets are crazy. We are headquartered in Bloomington, Illinois, and we've got two sets of brokers in our company. We've got one set of brokers that does commercial grain hedging, working with co-ops and ethanol plants and feed mills, that sort of thing, and helping them with the merchandising of the grain, rail stuff, stuff on the river freight, that sort of stuff. Matt and I are part of a group of brokers in the company that work directly with the producers in our area. So we're sprinkled across the Corn Belt. There's about 30 of us, and we just work with the customers in our area and help them market the grain and then hedge the risk that inevitably happens every year, whether it's upside risk and the markets are taking off or the markets are going down. Like last year, we had this slow bleed of the markets throughout the entire year, so we have tools that we use to manage that. One disclaimer, I am not an economist, all right? I'm an ag risk management advisor, I'm a broker, I'm not an economist, but I do like to get into some of the stuff looking back that has impacted the markets in the past few months, and what's coming up, what's gonna happen next. So that's what we're going to talk about, and the things that Matt and I watch every single day. So I'm going to go through South American weather, what's been going on there. The USDA report, specifically the January 10th report, which was a big deal, really caused the market to move quite a bit. And then Matt's going to go through some old crop and new crop strategies, things that we recommend. And again, we're coming at this from a hedging standpoint. We are hedgers. We use put options, call options, futures. We do crops, we do cattle, we do hogs. Everything basically works the same way. So what I want to talk about first is the South American weather. Right now, everything's pretty cool, right? Nothing's too hot, nothing's too dry. Argentina's actually getting a little bit too wet. Ironically, they were very dry earlier, and now they're getting very wet and might have some flooding. We shall see. But that's just a real quick look at what's going on. The big story right now is South American weather. Our crop has been made, it's in the bins, or it's been sold, whatever, but our crop's done. We're waiting to get ours planted. Every year we go through this. The cycle right now is all eyes on South America. So what's going on there? This is Brazil, right here. And they are in the middle of their soybean harvest, and it's gigantic. I guarantee it's going to be a record. It is a huge soybean crop that is coming. And it's very hard to read that, I know you can't. I'll just tell you, they are 36% harvested on their soybean crop right now. And as they're rolling their combines, they got the planters rolling right behind them, planting their double crop corn or their safrinha corn. And that grows during their winter. Doesn't mean it's cold, it's dry. That's their dry season, is the winter. So that double crop corn that they grow every year is always a high risk, high reward crop. It can easily, burn up. We've seen that happen in the past where they just don't get any rain, and they really, really rely on early rain to make that crop. Because by about first week of May 10th, right in that time frame, you can it's almost like clockwork. The spigot turns off in Brazil, and they don't get much more rain in their winter season. It's not like that for sure every year, but you really can count on that. And Mato Grosso, that is a state within Brazil. You've probably heard it before, and they're big. It's like if you put Iowa, Nebraska, Illinois all together. That's how much they produce comparatively to the rest of the different states that are in Brazil. So that's a big one. And they are 66% harvested on their beans, and they were wet. So they were a little bit delayed getting their bean harvest going, but they're pretty much caught up now. Not quite to last year's pace, but that was a record. They're actually above the 5-year average. So point being, the big bean crop, it's coming, and it's a tidal wave of beans coming out of Brazil yet again this year. This is where they are on their second crop corn planting. Okay, so again, they're coming right behind those the combines, and they're planting their double crop corn. And they are at 53% as a country. Mato Grosso, 67%. And Mato Grosso grows 48% of all that double crop corn. So I mean, that is really the main important state. The other ones all matter, but that's a big one. So that's what the market has been watching. Right, so what's going on in South America? We've seen the bean prices, right? Haven't done anything super exciting, and it's because they know that crop is made. It's made and it's coming, and it's going to be hitting the market. And then we won't be the export, we're not the go-to right now. It'll be going to Brazil. Real quick, Argentina, we did have a little bit of excitement in the market. Argentina got really, really dry. They had plenty of moisture early on, but then they had like 2 weeks where they were between 95 and 105 degrees every single day. So really burning up. But then they got a bunch of late rains. So beans, how they are. Like ours are made in August. We'll see how their bean crop came up and how it finished. It'll be interesting. Brazil's crop is really big. Will it be enough to compensate for any lower production that we might see in Argentina? So that's what we're watching there. The drought monitor for the U.S. What a year last year, right? Couldn't stop the rain, right? May, June, it just kept coming, and then we finished with a drought. So we're a little dry. Haven't had a lot of snow cover again this winter, so remains to be seen. Weather is always the biggest thing that drives the markets, right? That will always be the biggest thing. So we're not catastrophic by any means, but we're dry, right? We're going to need some nice rains this spring to get us going. Quick thing about the USDA reports. We had one in February, total dud. They didn't even change any of the numbers on the corn and bean production. But I want to go back and just talk about what happened on January 10th. And that was a really, really big thing because prior to that, the whole year, the USDA was telling us, big crop, right? Just record yield, going to be record production. That's what we lived with. And you guys as producers, you have to deal with that from a living. You're making your living standpoint because the market trades off whatever the USDA is saying. So for months and months, big crop coming. So then what happened January 10th? The corn yield slashed 3.8 bushel per acre, record. They've never done that before. That was our second largest decrease, I think, ever. And that brought the production down by 276 million bushels. Significant. Okay, that matters. Beans, a little bit lower drop, 1 bushel per acre, but again, brought down the production overall. I'm not going to get into too many of the numbers here, but basically what happened was, we went down 276 million bushels, and the stocks got tighter. They got tighter. And prior to that report, the corn market had started to show a little bit of life, but then it really started to ratchet up after that. Because global stocks are also a little bit tighter on corn. Again, we're not in a panic. There's corn out there, but it did tighten up the belt a little bit on the corn stocks. Same with the beans, not quite as drastic. Different thing with the beans, though, just to reiterate, the Brazilian crop is made. The Argentina crop is pretty much made. So we know half of that story's kind of been told from a global production standpoint on the beans. Corn's got more, what the heck's going to happen? What's going to happen with their double crop corn? How about here domestically? That sort of thing. Oh boy, this has got a lot of crap going on. Look at Minnesota, all right? I'm just going to go through the 3 numbers that are there. The red number, that is the yield for the state of Minnesota on that January 10th report. The number right below it, and that's 174 bushel per acre. Right below it is 183. That is what the report said in November. So that was a 9 bushel per acre drop in Minnesota. And we had an 8 bushel per acre drop in Nebraska. A couple in Iowa, but Indiana 11, Ohio 8. It was a significant reduction of yield across the board. And the green number is just the record yield for each individual state. But just to kind of give you a feel for how much they really took off what they had thought that corn yield was going to be to what it ended up being. So pretty big change. So March corn futures, starting back, we were pretty low. It wasn't fun. November, December, and then all of a sudden in December, it was like the most slow, boring rally I've seen in the corn market. It was just like never up, 10, 20 limit update. Didn't have anything like that. Just days, up 3, up 4, up 2, up 3, up 4, but enough, and it just kind of kept going and going. January report, boom, we take off and go up a little bit higher, and we've kind of maintained. Last 3 days have been a little bit of a beating in the market, but still way higher than I thought we were going to see. And again, I'm not predictive, but back in November, December, if someone would have told me, hey, JD, by mid-February, you're going to see July and May futures over $5, 5.10, 5.15, I wouldn't have believed it, but here we are. So this goes to show the markets are very unpredictable. So the March board has had a nice little rally. All beans, basically the same map, the yield, they basically brought everybody down 1 bushel per acre. Is really what happened there. And the March beans, nearby futures saw a nice little rally post-harvest for a bit, not anything too significant, right? And we've given some of that back here recently too in the last couple weeks, but it did start to ride up, and that January 10th report again was the catalyst behind it. But now as it's going down, reflective of the large South American crop. So that's what we're seeing there. All right. So, and that's just to show that that was a record decrease in yield in the USDA report. And that's just word numbers. Global stocks, tighter on corn. Beans, not as pressing. Corn, a little bit more. Managed money, the funds. You always hear about the funds, or the funds long, or the funds short. They are long. And that was why the market, the corn market went higher. The funds were buying and buying. It was just this gradual thing. We had a record short, and then they just started adding length, and they kept buying and buying, and now we're up about as high as we've been in quite a few years. Did my mic just go up? It did. Did I press anything? Green light's on. I'll keep talking to it until it comes back on. All right. I can't look that way and talk anymore. I don't have a microphone that's working. It's working again. It always working again. Okay. All right. I'm going to need a beer after this. So anyway, the funds go long, and that's good for us because it makes the price go a little bit higher. And again, kind of this gradual rally. But we added a significant amount on. So my question would be, and you don't have to answer this with a show of hands, but I like to do this. How many of you thought you were going to see corn over $5 for May or July on the future side back when you were harvesting? Did you think that was going to happen? Yeah, probably not. No, I agree. So my question would be, why aren't you selling it? Okay, why aren't you selling it? All right. So asking the tough questions. Matt's going to talk to you about that. I just get to ask the question and then not have to deal with it. But I would consider it. I would. I didn't think it was going to happen. Well, now we're back below $5 again on the board, but. If you didn't think you were going to see it, it's probably something you should reward. Would be, and again, I'm coming from a hedging standpoint. We would defend that sale, but that was Matt and I were on the phone quite a bit with our customers, going, "Hey, we're at 5.15 on the board. How about we do a hedge to arrive and lock in basis later and having those conversations?" So when managed money's up there, that's good until it ain't, right? Until all of a sudden they decide to sell. And then the market starts going lower, and it's going to happen at some point. Who knows when? Maybe they're going to hold and stay there for a while. I don't know. I don't know what they're going to do. But if all this in it, I always tell people, look, the funds do not have to follow the fundamentals. If all of a sudden corn ain't sexy to be in anymore, they're going to start selling it and taking their profit. Okay, it can happen when it doesn't make any sense to us. And managed money on the soybeans, also, they are long, not nearly as strong of a long position as we're seeing in corn. And again, that's because of the big Brazilian crop. It went up when there was kind of some weather concerns with potential drought or heat and all that stuff going on, but then it mellowed off again. So one thing I want to talk to everybody about is a lot of people have been asking me, we're shorter crop this year than we've been for the past 2-3 years in the state of Minnesota. But yet our basis is probably a little bit wider than we've seen over the past couple years. Why is that? And the reason why, talking about basis specifically, our corn is staying here. It's not getting pulled out anywhere like it has the past few years. We have droughts up in Canada that a lot, like where I grew up on my farm out in western Minnesota. Western Minnesota corn and northwestern, that stuff all went up to Canada. So that, again, then affects, corn in this area and where everything's moving. And basis has to work to keep corn, beans local, that sort of thing. And then we had to feed the southwestern feedlots through the droughts in Nebraska and Iowa that typically fed them. That corn, they didn't need it, right? They got their corn from their usual sources. Our corn is staying here. where corn is here. So that's why, basis, it's not terrible. It's really not, but it's not as good as what we've seen. And that's just a real simplistic view as to why, but it's a pretty big reason why our corn isn't moving a whole lot. Now, we haven't had huge sales to China. Don't know if we will. The tariff stuff kicked off again. That was part of the lower prices. If tariffs go in with Mexico, Canada, China, it's not great for us, on the price standpoint. It is what it is. So just a heads up. Oh yeah, we had a couple ethanol plants go offline as well. That doesn't help, right? So you don't have our corn getting sucked out of here for other countries' needs or other areas in the country, their needs. And then you have a couple ethanol plants go offline. So that doesn't do a lot of good for us either. So that's just a real quick overview. So I'm going to turn it over to Matt. My big things were just to talk about, what has affected the markets and what's coming up, right? So we've got the planting intentions report on March 31st, probably looking at, I'm guessing, 93 million acres corn, 88 to beans. Looks like beans are going to have to, do some work. We'll see how that comes out. I think that's what the market's already thinking. Those numbers have been floating out there for quite a while. But that's a big thing on the horizon. And then, of course, we've got to make our crop here. And then all eyes will be on getting this crop planted domestically. And then what's going on with that safrinha crop in Brazil. So that's kind of the big 15,000-foot overview of stuff that's going on. I'm going to turn it over to Matt. And then at the end, we'll have some time for questions if people want to, again, we're not economists, but we can do our best. And if we can't answer it, we'll be honest and say we can. So there you go.
All right, thanks, JD. As JD said, my name is Matt Buckingham. I grew up on a farm in West Concord. I'm also a Brookings graduate, so that being said, I also feel out of place without having a beer right now. I live in Zumbrota, work out of my home office. Zumbrota is where the sale barn is. Let's see. Most of the farms that I work with, I used to work at the elevator in Montevideo, Granite Falls as their grain buyer. So most of my farms are actually Fergus Falls down to Marshall. So most of my guys are 4 hours away from where I live. And kind of funny, that's kind of where JD grew up, and he works with all the farmers where I grew up. So we're kind of flip-flopped backwards. But I'm going to talk a little bit more about the things we can control. JD talked about a lot of things that are out of our control. The outside factors, weather, South America, we're all playing into the markets and the price and all that stuff. It's just we have no control over it. It causes us to lose sleep at night wondering about it. And as JD said, the advice I'm going to give today is assuming we're managing risk and not predicting markets. So if I say anything that is leading you to think that the price of corn is going up or down, we have no idea. But our approach is get the positions on and be in place to be able to react to markets, whether they're higher or lower, and be in control. We want to be in control. We want a plan that has value. Third thing is, we want to secure revenue, protect our balance sheet. I'll talk about farm bankruptcies on the next slide. That's a big piece of it. We go to the bank, we get leverage in terms of debt, loans. We want to offset that leverage with some of the tools that we have, puts or calls, futures, options, all the tools, and learn how to use them. Our job as advisors isn't to, I think a misconception is if you work with a marketing guy, that guy is taking control and doing everything for you. And I would say it's probably the opposite. I would say my guys feel like they're in more control because they're using a guy like JD and I to educate and help them use the tools that they have access to. A couple of other things to think about. I like these perspective questions. I think our human nature is very easy for us to think 3 months out, but it's very hard for us to picture 6 months or a year out. So am I using all the tools that I have access to in my current plan? And if you guys aren't, what is limiting you, or what's your reason for change? Third thing is the value that you spend in your marketing plan. Do you plan for a budget? Do you have a hedge line of credit? What is the reason you're not using any of the tools, or maybe you are and not to the full extent that you should be? And I get there's different times of year where we're not as aggressive, and other times we're more aggressive. But either way, does that cost that you're getting, if it's low in cost, are you getting the value? Is it reflecting that input cost? Other questions: what if futures? Say the South America crop is a big crop. They get rains. We have a big crop 2 years in a row, just like last year. The past 2 years, store and ignore was not a fun strategy, and I feel for you guys. It was not a fun 2 years. Hopefully, I think we're through the hangover of the bull market, and hopefully this rally we're in holds a little bit. But it is good knowing, mentally preparing. What if futures are at 360 next fall? We're still in this high break-even environment. If we lose $1, say 200 bushel corn for a break-even, $1 loss is $200 an acre. We're also in a different environment because interest rates are where they're at. So if I'm already on a line of credit and I lose $200 an acre, that's money that not only I lost, but now I have to borrow that same money back in order to operate. And now I have to borrow interest on the loss as well. Those are the uncomfortable things to think about. But the reality is if we do realize that those things can happen, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but that is realistic. That could happen if we have a big crop, trade war, tariff, another pandemic. Also, what if we do get a nice rally that we're hoping for? What if our break-even is no longer $4.50? What if it's $5? How are we going to defend that? So this is, don't report me for copyright, but I thought this was a great slide with bankruptcies. This, you guys in the back probably can't see this, but the aqua blue, baby blue color is bankruptcies in the Midwest. I actually thought, reading through other emails and stuff, that this would have been higher, but you got to keep in mind, I'm over in Dairyland. There's a lot of dairy farms by us. Two of my uncles still milk cows. Their dairy market's pretty good. Milk's 19. The cattle market has pulled back. I'll talk about it a little bit at the end. But overall, the cattle guys are still doing really well. Hot guys, it's kind of give and take. Now things are, well, we're looking better. But overall, the whole farm, I would say the green guys are probably feeling it probably the worst because we have this high break even. And in the past 2 years, we were in a downtrending market. Our human nature psychology, it's really hard to take action when the markets are just going straight down. So, in order to prepare, when this happens, there's a lot of times it's too late. This is the time where we want to prepare for those environments. And I think this, if we do see a hard turn, I think this could really spike up a lot quicker than we've seen in the past, just because we have the catalyst we're in of having the high interest cost. I mean, in here, some of the interest loans were 2-3%. It's pretty dramatic when you're at 8% borrowing money at that rate. So some of the tools that we use, the basics. So JD and I are licensed brokers. I have my crop insurance license, or will here soon. Not that we do we don't do any crop insurance at the moment, but we do insurance on the livestock side. But so what JD and I do with our customers is they open up a brokerage account. JD and I do all the very little bit of futures in the account. If a farmer wants to make a sale in there and they want flexible delivery, the main thing that we use in the account would be puts and calls. Puts and calls give us a floor. That's what a put is. Calls are what we use to re-own bushels as we sell. So the guy who's taking grain to town in the fall, good example, instead of paying storage and interest, let's pay back the loan, reconvert, own on paper with a call option, and it gives us our upside with a limited downside. Those are the tools that we use in the account for the most part. It allows us to avoid a contract. These tools, the cash contracts, basis contracts, HCAs, those are what we help advise farmers using to manage the carry, manage the basis for the stuff that's in their bin. We're in this, as JD said, this really wide basis environment. If you look at the commercial position, the amount of hedges on that the elevators have on, the farmer is roughly about 70% sold. So when JD asks, why aren't you guys selling? You're all holding on to the last 20-30%. We know that by looking at the elevated commercial position. So our approach is re-owning at the time we make the sales that 70% with call options. So JD and I have call options on those earlier sales we made. And then the other 20-30% that's unsold, we use put options to set floors to manage the downside risk, especially now that the markets have rallied. But back to the basis, as JD said, we're in this wide basis environment. Why? Because the farmer's 70% sold. The market's rallied, farmers have fed it, and they had pretty good reason to sell into it because we had an inauguration, we had Trump coming in, and we knew these tariffs were going to come on, and it could have went the other way pretty quick and fast. They also had some delayed planning in South America. Exports were a record, so this rally was really on the wall of worry. But either way, as basis generally widens as the futures go up. But now, guys that are looking to make forward sales, I still probably wouldn't set basis out there yet, especially if it's in July. I would stay probably patient on that. Granted, a lot of stuff can change if these tariffs come on and more ethanol plants start shutting down. Then I would be maybe upfront or a little bit more progressive of setting that basis. Honestly, if there's anything that I maybe would set some basis on, it's probably new crop. Minnesota's going to have a lot more corn acres. I say pretty confidently, talking to my guys, especially as you go west, my guys in the sugar beet, edible bean country. They are sick of soybeans. They would rather plant those and or all corn. I have heard of a couple guys planting 100% corn and buying up the ECO 90%. I don't know if they're actually going to do it, because if you're going to grow all corn, you better have a big line of credit or have cash to plant that much, and or if no one's got bin storage to put all their acres into corn in the bin, so they're going to have to take a fall cash price, which is usually not as good. But in general, we use all those tools. There's more tools at the elevator that you can get than this, the accumulators, the double ups. GD and I typically stay pretty far away from those. We do like the basics. We're pretty conservative. We know what manages risk, what adds risk to our farm. We just look at it, your whole farm as a portfolio, and use all the tools that we have access to. I always think of it as you're playing chess against the market, but most people are only using two pieces to try to play the game. We want to use all the tools that we have to our advantage to be on defense and on offense, because the market's going to throw it all at you guys. Put option, how it works. If I have a 450 put option and the market goes to 350, that's going to be worth $1. If I paid 15 cents for it, it's going to net 85 cents. If the market goes up to 550, I'm going to lose the 15 cents that I paid for the put option. Now, do you guys want to see gains on put options? Not really. It's like insurance on your house. You don't really want to have a claim on your house. Probably means your house is on fire. When we buy put options, that's the second most bullish strategy you can be in besides doing nothing. So we love put options. They buy us time until we can make our marketing decisions. We also can use these out in those deferred months to pick up carry and new crop right now. I'll get through some of these new crop advice, but that's the big thing, because you don't have very much sold on new crop. So what we use is put options to fill the void, fill in the big hole in case this market goes down like it did last year. Call options, they're just the opposite. If I sell my corn and I buy a $5 call because I want to re-own and stay in the market, a lot of times I really like selling cash when the market's down, or doing a basis contract. But if I do a cash contract, if I'm not happy with the futures price, that's usually when the basis is good, I'll sell and I'll re-own with a call option, and it keeps me in the market. So you guys right now that are thinking about pricing this corn, you could go out there and sell July futures, I think $4.95, and or, we were $5.20ish, I think we got up to. Even if you guys said you want to price the rest of your corn, leave basis out of it for now, and just set the futures, I would just say, that's fine, let's just buy some July call options at $5.20 for 15 cents, ballpark in there is usually probably what we spend, just so you have a plan in case corn goes to 7. I really like having control of the old crop through our growing season, because if we do get a market rally, it probably means our weather isn't very favorable and we might be taking a yield hit on new crop. So having some control is what call options give us with the old crop to help us participate, especially if you have flex rent. And either way, the guy that's on a big line of credit, generating cash back into the business, call options are going to allow us to do that. So just because we spend 15 cents in cost, that might have saved us 30 cents in interest costs and storage costs by using a different strategy or tool. And if we sell our corn and we don't see a gain on our call option, the market doesn't rally anymore, that probably means our sales in a pretty good spot. So put options I really don't want to see a gain on. Call options, it's kind of a double-edged sword. If you see a gain on your call option, it's probably because the market's rallied. If you don't, it probably means your sales in a pretty good spot. So I'll go through this kind of quick, but like I said, it's kind of like a game of playing chess. Most farmers either sell or do nothing. It's kind of their only two tools that most guys use. What we like doing, obviously, is using puts and calls. So if the market's going to go from 5 down to 4, the best thing you can do is just be a seller. The second best thing would be to sell and buy a call. Say we paid 15, 20 cents for a call. That would be our max loss. Third best strategy would be to buy a put. Generally, if I'm going to buy a put, it's probably 15 cents below the market for 15 cents, so I got 30 cents of slippage. So that's why it would be the selling and buying a call. You would have a hedge loss, but it still would have been the second best position to be in. And then fourth, doing nothing, obviously you would have suffered a $1 loss, 200 bushel corn. The opportunity cost would have been $200 an acre. Third, now if you flip it, if the market rallies from 4 to 5, the best thing you can do is wait and do nothing. Second best thing, that's why I said buying puts is the second most bullish position to be in. If you would have paid 15 cents for a put and the market went up $1, you would have lost the 15 cents, but your cash price would have been $1 higher. Third, you would have sold and bought a call. The call would have been probably 30 cents above the market, so you probably only would have gained 70 cents out of the $1. Worst thing you could have done is sell too early. If you sold at 4, price goes to 5, you have $200 in opportunity cost the other way. So, that's how the game works. The goal of the game is to avoid 4th place. Super easy. But I do think if you flip it, the key takeaway here is the value of flexibility gets you out of 4th place. And this is why we really feel like the cost of options are justified and worth it, because you're probably going to end up in the 2nd or 3rd best marketing position. Get through here. How am I doing on time? I already went through this. New crop ideas. Generally speaking, when we're managing the risk, it takes a combination of all the tools. It just does. So, for you guys today that are thinking about selling, these futures are 470. You could go out there, you could sell futures, HTA, and obviously, depending on the basis in your harvest plan, but let's talk futures for now. You could sell, even if you wanted to re-own, you could re-own all of it. Let's say you sold 50,000, you could re-own the 50,000 with a 490 call for 16 1/8 of a cent is probably where I would look at. This is a July short-dated example. It's not the actual July old crop month. This trades off of the December 470 futures. They just short date it in time, so we don't have to buy out the whole year with the December. So they work great. And honestly, I kind of like that they expire in that spring time frame where historically it's been a good time to be exiting long positions. So if you did think about making a small sale out there, you could still have some flexibility to re-own it. And maybe if you sold 50,000, maybe you just re-own half of it. Re-own 25% of the sale, so you got some flexibility. A lot of times they call call options courage calls because a lot of guys won't actually feel comfortable selling the futures. Why? Because if the market goes up a buck, now they're in the worst position ever. So that's why they call them courage calls, so farmers feel comfortable selling the actual grain. Now, most of the grain you guys aren't going to sell, especially with the drought monitor looking as dry as it is, and or if it was the other way and really wet, it probably would be the same boat, no one would want to sell. And it's just early. It's early in the year. So what you can do is you can set a floor. July short dated 450 put for 13 cents or 460 is 17 cents. And just in comparison, why we're using these short dated ones is a December 450 put is 25 cents. So they're about half the value. But it's the concept to get. Don't get too stuck up in the quotes on how they work. We want to have floors in place and we want to have flexibility. Old crop, same thing. You guys that are going to hold on to the last third, 20% of the old crop, what you can do is you can set a floor and protect that downside. Or if you guys are already 100% sold, maybe re-own some grain with some call options, something around 16. Generally, I don't think we spend more than 20 cents on corn. Usually it's never less than 10. We can look at the strike prices and determine what's efficient and the most bang for our buck. Cattle, I'll talk about just real quick, just because there's a lot of risk in this cattle market. We just had a cattle on feed report last Friday, and the feeder cattle numbers are about as tight as they've been for 10 years. There's a lot of talk of herds not rebuilding. I think the big difference right now is so many people are spading all these heifers, throwing them into the feedlot that there's just not enough calves, plus just the price of them to do it, the opportunity cost. So, say you have 100 head you're feeding at the farm, and you wanted to set a floor underneath those calves or cattle. And I'm not going to do an example of selling you buying a call just because pretty much everyone already sold any cattle that they already had. So if you have unsold cattle, this is probably what I would do. If you have 100 head, say they're going to be 1,500 pounds, that's 150 pounds of beef, 140,000 pounds of contract. You got 3.7 or 3 3/4 of the contract. June futures are 192, say you bought a 188 put for 350. 4 contracts is what that would be. I'm just rounding up. 100 head, 350. It'd be $5,600 in order to set that floor in place. 5,600 divided by 100 head would be around $56 a head. If this thing does correct, and eventually we know bull markets have the party ends with a hangover. Eventually, you will hear some major horror stories of people that will probably never feed cattle again if they're wide open and ride this cattle market down. You'll see that the farm bankruptcies shoot up. This cattle deal, you always hear, I feel like, the most stories of people being unhedged and unprotected, or double hedged the wrong way and ride it double down. So that's about all I have. As JD said, he will take all the hard questions.
All right, good evening, everyone. If you're with NEU, we appreciate your business. If you're not, we appreciate it if you come over to us. So I'm going to go through, my name's Steve Fraley. I live up in Richmond, Minnesota. I'm originally from Devil's Lake, North Dakota area. Grew up on a farm there. My brother took over. I didn't have enough guts to farm. I couldn't do the stress thing, so I went the easy way. I got into crop insurance. So in my pastime, I live on a lake, so I do some fishing, but I've been looking for an old truck for many years, and I found one 2 summers ago. It's an old International KB1, or what's the old corn binder. So, but usually they're about $5,000 for a big old bucket of rust, and I found a good one. So I've been working on that. I'm going to try to stick with the mind can only absorb what the seat can bear. So I'm going to cruise along pretty fast here, hit the top high points. As far as NEU, we do have a farm services, and we do have Rich Morrison, who used to be a grain trader. He does a morning bell call every morning, and then he does a market report afterwards that you guys can sign up for. So if you're interested, talk to anyone at Citizens here, and we can get you signed up. Typically, I go through the weather. We kind of talked about the drought. One of the things last year at this same time, we were so worried about the drought, right? And what happened? We got excessive moisture. And then later on in the year, we had drought soybeans. So when you look at crop insurance, that's why we buy it, because we never know what's going to happen. I'm going to skip through. There's deep soil moisture maps I got, El Nino. I'm going to get to the most important weather forecast, the Onion Lady. Has anybody ever heard of the Onion Lady? I Googled it. I heard this was like back in 2005. So the Onion Lady harvests her onions, and then, I don't know the exact science, but she cuts them up, puts salt, puts them in the windowsill, and then she can forecast the weather throughout the year. So, February, very wet. She might be off a little bit on that one. March, very, very wet, right? And you can see wet, damp, wet, dry, damp, and wet. So there we go. That's all you need. All right? Some farmers live by that. All right. I'm going to skip through this. I'm going to get into, I got my little crop insurance food pyramid here. When you meet with the citizens, the crop insurance agents, we're going to sit down and, the bottom part here is our most important part of the crop insurance, right? We're going to sit down and talk to you about revenue protection, what level covers you the best for a safety net, probably, some wind and hail. That's still our number one spot loss peril in southern Minnesota. And then what's new this year is a lot of talk about the ECO, Enhanced Coverage Option, okay? I would probably should also add into this level is your decisions at FSA for the farm program, okay? We're going to talk about that. My next one up here, we already heard on our marketing, try to get a plan in place. Hope is not a plan. Try to get some stuff sold, know your break-evens and stuff. Then on top, we got a bunch of different additional insurance that you can buy. If you want to spend $100 an acre, I can find policies that we can sell you, right? I think this is where we're going to be at this year. All right? So right now we're setting our prices for our corn and soybeans. We track, like for corn, we're tracking the daily closing of every day for the December new crop corn, okay? I didn't get today's, but right now we're at 472 average. So we only got 4 or 5 days left to track on our soybeans. So, and last year we were at 466. So that's a good price that we got on our corn. On our soybeans, we're at 1058. Last year we were at 1155. Okay, so we're down on our soybeans. So that's where we're at with our prices. When we're talking about revenue protection, when you're sitting there, trying to determine what level you want to be at, I always kind of start with this chart, and with my APH, that's your stake in the policy. You develop 10-year APH, right? We got some tools that help build that AP up, so it's actually ensuring what your potential growth is. But then we're going to choose levels. All right, I got examples of 80 and 85, and so we take that times our APH. We have 160 and 170 bushel guarantee. Okay, with the revenue protection, we take that and we do our spring price. Okay, I'm a 1 penny off here, but we take that times our spring price, and then this is your revenue guarantee. Your policy is never going to be any less than that for a guarantee, right? The third step on your coverage, we're going to take those same bushel guarantees and we track those same prices through the month of October to set the harvest price. So corn, we're tracking October, new crop December, right? Soybeans, we're tracking November, beans to set the price. So you get the higher of those two, all right? Then to figure out your harvest value, we'll take what you harvest times that harvest price. We always use the harvest price there to come up with your harvest value, and then you can see when we subtract that out. So that's protection of when the market falls down, right? So with your crop insurance and during that growing season, it's kind of like buying a subsidized put in there. That's the way I like to explain it, okay? You're protecting that 472 or wherever we end up for our final price, okay? Here's kind of the history of where our prices have been. So when you look at the yellow bars here, this is this is our spring price. The green is our harvest price. Out of 18 years, 12 of those, we've seen big price drops, all right? So when I go back to this example, I've harvested my guaranteed bushels. I'm strictly got a price loss there, right? Now this year, we had a little bit of mix of both. We had about 11% price drop, and then we had yield losses, across southern Minnesota. All right, so back in 2012, during the big drought during the ice states, we didn't have too bad of yields here, but the harvest price went up to $7.50, and then if you had yield losses, that covered you, okay? It also covers you, it also covers you if the harvest price goes up in the fall, all right? Same numbers, same bushel guarantee. If you take the third step now, we're going to take the bushels, and then when the harvest price is higher, my liability actually goes up during that scenario, right? So I like to call that a freebie. Your premium is based on the spring price. This one, you get an increase in your liability, and it doesn't cost you anymore, okay? So when you harvest your bushels, I put it at 165 bushels just to kind of show you that I don't have a loss at the 80% level, but at 85, I'm 5 bushels short. We're always going to take that times that harvest price, and you can see I would collect $27 in that example, all right? We have 6 out of the 18 years where the price goes up in the fall. All right, soybeans works exactly the same way. I'm not going to just do the time. I'm going to skip through these. As far as the years, soybeans are a little more even. We have 9 out of 18 years where the price is lower. And then we have 8 out of 18 years where the price is higher in the fall. In 2013, it was at the spring price and the harvest price were exactly the same. Wonder what the odds are of that, okay? All right, so the next move then, I'm going to talk about a little bit on the hail. You know, like I said, wind on our corn, hail on our soybeans and corn, you know, that still is our #1 spot loss peril. I think when you sit down with citizens here, they're going to talk to you a little bit about hail. How much do you feel comfortable with? One of the things we have available to you is we do have an app for you as a farmer. And one of the things in our system, we can track hailstorms throughout Minnesota. And this is our path through the 24 year. Now, I looked at this and you know, it's measuring stuff up in the cloud. I said, well, let's take some of those layers off where I know it didn't hail on a lot of this light ground, or it didn't even hit the ground. So here's a track where it's 1 inch or greater, okay, 1 1/4 inch greater, and 1.5 inches. Now that's, again, up in the cloud. Our adjusters that worked some of these claims here, you know, that stuff, they got totaled out there in that area here, you know, and the hail was probably, you know, 1 inch, 3/4 to 1 inch that actually made it to the ground. So I think it's important to look at, all right? The next step we're going to look at is, so there are 2 coverages. There's SCO and then also ECO. SCO covers you from whatever level you're at up to 86% level, okay? Now it is based on a county-based type policy, so we use year yields to set the liability, but it's based on the county loss experience, okay? I think when we get into talking about the farm program, it sounds like a lot of people are going to be taking Ark County. Is that what you guys are hearing? And I'll show you a little bit on that. If you take Ark County, you can't buy SCO policy. So we don't see that being sold. The big one here is going to be ECO. And the big change with ECO, if you sat down with the agent last year, it was too expensive. Is probably why you didn't take it, right? What's new this year, and we helped develop this, took it to the government, got subsidies in place, and then this summer we went to the federal crop insurance services and we said we'd like to see an increase in subsidy on that. So they increased it from 44 to 65%, all right? That's why we're kind of calling it the blue light special. For those of you old enough, that was Kmart thing, right? Yeah, okay. So it's available. It doesn't matter what you have at FSA as far as county ARC or the PLC program. The indemnity is paid once the final yield comes out for the year. And what they do for the yield, so the price is going to be exactly the same as what your revenue protection is. The final yield is they'll take the county, and once all the claims and all the production in a county are gathered together, they're going to give an average of that, all right? So that doesn't come out because crop insurance gives you up until April 29th to report your production. The government won't give us those yields until probably June, okay? It's the exact same yield that our county at FSA's program uses, all right? So here's kind of a layout of on your base, you're going to pick whatever coverage level you're at. Here, you're going to choose between, are you going to do ARC or SCO? So we're thinking ARC is going to be kind of from that 86 to 76 range, and then ECO takes you from 86 up to the 95% level. So it's a 9% band, all right? It is on top of, or on the top end, right? It's a shallow band on the very top end. It is revenue based. So when we look at the county, and I'll get to a slide, but it's using a county expected yield. We use our 472 price on the corn, and then that gives a county revenue. Then they also do the harvest price and then the harvest yield to figure out if there's a loss. Okay? Here are some of the expected yields in the counties around us here. So you can take a peek at that for both the corn and soybeans. All right? If you have any questions, citizens will walk you through this too. All right? So here's kind of a flow of how this works for you. All right? So if we have 472 this February price, let's just use I put in an example. If the price drops to 420, okay, I have a APH of 210. My farm expected value is 991, right? We're taking ECO from 86 to 95, so that's 9%. So we multiply that out, and I got about $89 worth of coverage there. So if I have a higher APH than 210, I'm going to get a bigger number there. If it's a little lower, it might be a little less, right? Okay, so that's how we figure. So each one of your units is going to have that 9% applied to it. For the county then, they have expected yield. So this is the Brown County expected yield times the 472, gives you that $959 worth of coverage. If the county yield comes in average, right where we're at there, and the harvest price drops, we got $853 of final revenue. So they're going to subtract that or multiply that out. That's 88.9% minus the 95 level. That's about a 6.15 or 6.10% loss. Okay? So in this example, you don't have to know all the math. I would get $60, almost $6.60 and 48 cents loss just in that example with that price loss. So you can see this works just like your revenue protection, but now we're at that 95% level of how the county performs, right? This is kind of a matrix that the agents here at Citizens can kind of show you. And what this is okay, we're sitting here, and then it gives the county yields of what could happen if it goes up or down, and then if the harvest price goes up or down. It does have, just like revenue protection, if the harvest price goes up, it does increase your amount of coverage on there. Okay? Is there any questions on that? Does it make sense? Clear as mud? All right. Oops. So one of the things I did, because a lot of farmers were asking me, is okay, if I buy this, what's my rate of return? All right. So this is Brown County, and over the years, I went back 20 years, and these may be a little hard to see, but like in 2007, you would have got paid $58, $78 in 2008, 2012, 56, 94 in 2013, 77. So what I did is I added up the total losses for 20 years and divided it out. And I would have got 28, in this example, I would have got $28 average every year. And right now, it costs me about $15 to buy this. So my rate of return is, a little better than almost half of what I'm spending. So, if that helps you out any, if I'm gonna take this. Soybeans are the same way. I average those out. It's $14.68 average, and it cost me $8.14. All right, and so if I'm going to collect on these years, when we look back in 2012, 13 or 14, 18 and 19 is another most recent. On 23, we would have collected everything, okay? On 24, it would max out, but why don't we have a price in there, or a loss in there yet? Because we're not gonna know the final yield until June, right? The end of May, June, that's when it would pay. So, but, I mean, just looking at the price drop of 11% on corn, and I mean, where do you think Brown County yields are going to be at? 150, 170. I mean, it wasn't good in areas, right? So we think we're pretty sure it's going to pay 100% in 24. All right. How's that for the crop insurance? Any questions for me? I forgot to say. So I'm from North Dakota. I moved to Madelia back in '93. I lived in Madelia for 27 years, I think. And then we bought a lake place. And once the kids graduated, my wife taught in Madelia. We moved up to the lake place. And sorry, Bruce, but we haven't looked back. All right. So the last section I want to go through is going to be on the farm program, okay? You do have, or if you didn't grab one, we have a handout out there for you if you want to take it home. So when I go through, I'm going to kind of just point out things. Now remember, the farm program is FSA's program, so if you think I'm telling you to go one way or other and something happens where it's the total opposite, it's not my program. Okay? So we do want you to do some research, and I'll show you some calculators. So for last year's program, these are the reference prices on our corn and soybeans. So it was 401 and 926. So we didn't get a farm bill done, so they extended the same program into the 25 year. They did change. Up here, we do have until April 15th to sign up. Once you figure out what you're going to do on your crop insurance, I would say go ahead and go in and get signed up right away once you get your crop insurance done. So, new for this year's, they did increase our reference price. So we have PLC and Ark County, right? PLC is strictly a price loss. So you have program yields at FSA, they pay 85% of your base acres, and then if the price drops below 426 on our corn and 911 or 966 on our soybeans, you could collect on that, okay? Why everyone's kind of switching over to, if you were on PLC and switching over to the Ark County, is that they use an Olympic average on the price, okay? So the last 5 years, Olympic average means they're going to throw a high and low price out. They do the same thing on the yield for the county. Each county has an Olympic yield or benchmark. And so we've got rid of 2018, which was a low price. So when we look at the Ark County program, we're going to start out with the 503 on our corn and 1217 on our soybeans. Okay. You also, if you didn't grab it, there's Kent Teesey's decision-making tool that you can kind of read through and kind of get an idea. So One of the things with County ARC, it's a 10% band that they're covering, right? You can get paid more on the PLC because they're taking your program yields and it's just price loss all the way down, right? So you could get paid more, but what has to happen with that is the prices got to get really low, all right? So read through that, do your research. I'm going to show you a calculator. The one I like, and I know this is going to make a couple guys mad because it's so on Ken Kesey's sheet there, on the one side, it's got some calculators. I like NDSU's the best. All right. For you rabbit fans, you might be mad at me. No, that's not. But as soon as I ask, does SDSU have a calculator? Nah. So, and maybe you can run this and we're gonna type in like different prices and stuff. So okay, so this calculator that you can access, why I like it because you can do both crops at the same time, or all your crops. Okay, so you can put your base acres in here, your program yields. If you don't know them, FSA's got them. Back in 2018, they let us update those program yields. You remember? It was from like 2013 to 17. We updated those. I don't know what they are. I just put the same county yield in. So like in Brown County, for County ARC, we're going to start with a 201, okay, times that 503 price, right? So just in this example, there's our trigger for PLC, that 426 and the 966, with the price loss on the both corn and soybeans. You're already going to collect $45 and $12 on our soybeans. So if we say the yield is flat in the county, let's go down and start lowering like the PLC price on corn. Let's put in $4. So PLC would pay 26 cents a bushel, all right? So you can still see, let's put $9.50 in for the soybeans. So 53 on the soybeans, PLC would pay $8.56 on County ARC corn. PLC is going to start getting you into 44. Let's put $4.90 in for corn. Let's put it down to $9.25 on soybeans. I think we got a tab over on the I'm sorry, not 490. Where were we at?
Where are you going lower?
Yeah.
390 probably. 390?
Yeah. 390. So at some point, about 80 some dollars, your County ARC is going to max out, but your PLC will start taking over. But let's go 370 on corn. There you can see PLC starts paying over, right? But if you remember my ladder on our protection, my revenue protection is going to cover me up to 86% level. County ARC is free, right, at FSA. So it's kind of like a 1 in the hand, 2 in the bush. You're going to get paid out quicker to get up to that 86, which I think is probably the max on the ARC County versus the, and then soybeans works the same way. So to sum it all up, I recommend downloading this, play around, use your county yields in there. You can put your base acres in. It's pretty nice, easy quoter to kind of work with, or tool, okay? Any questions? One of the things, was it, Matt, did you say, like, the guy that was gonna plant all corn and then take 90% ECO? I don't recommend that, because you're buying the county average, and with ECO, you can take, you want to be at 95, and we can reduce the coverage percent down to even 50. So your trigger's 95, you can lower your coverage percent. So if I had $80 worth of coverage and I lower it by 20%, it's going to lower my premium 20% and my coverage. It'll still be above the 90% ECO. So just that thought of that, I heard, when you were saying that. So, any questions?
Hello, everyone. Give me just a minute. I gotta figure out this clicker. Okay, there we go. I'm Emily Ponwith. I'm Ryan's wife, as he mentioned a few different times. I am a former teacher turned farm wife extraordinaire, just doing a lot of different things to involve myself in the farm and to help support Ryan. And I'm going to share a little bit more about our story and how I got into this position, because I was not always actively involved in our farming operation. There were many years at the beginning of our relationship, especially, that I really had no idea what was going on, and I didn't really care, because I was going to be a teacher, and I was going to be a teacher my whole life, because that was my job as a farm wife. I needed to work for insurance. That was my trajectory, okay? And so today I'm going to share a little bit more about where we're at. So I am a farmer, a farm wife, a business owner, a mother, all of these things. And I'm guessing by looking out at the crowd, many of you also wear a variety of hats on any given day. As farmers and business owners, we're not traditional, 9-to-5 employees. Sometimes that can be hard for others not involved in farming to understand. And we feel like we have this constant need to explain, well, this is what I'm doing all day. I'm not actually just driving around and looking at my fields. I do a lot of work when it's not harvest and planting too. And so really just helping myself understand that concept, but also everyone around me. I want them to feel confident in what agriculture is and the great people behind it. So I have been part of our farm for 15 years, going a little over 15 years now. That's just short of less than half of my life, which is crazy. I did not grow up on a farm. I grew up in rural Minnesota. I understood that, we need farmers. They're very important, but I didn't know anything about it. So I spent a lot of time in the buddy seat when Ryan and I first started dating. I think that many of you maybe have ridden in the buddy seat a time or two as well. I don't like to ride in the buddy seat anymore. That's for the kids. I will drive a tractor. I have learned how to drive, but the buddy seat's not my goal. But that buddy seat taught me a lot of things. I spent a lot of hours in the buddy seat, and the first thing I noticed was how hungry I got. I'm like, where's the food? I need some food. And no one was bringing food, and I could not figure out how these men were working so hard and for so many hours, and what were they fueling their bodies on. And so I spotted a problem, and it was my first real revelation, I can help here. Mind you, I'm 19, 20 years old at this time. So I saw this need, and that was how I ended up in my future father-in-law's kitchen, Googling recipes about how to make field meals. And I figured it out. I taught myself how to cook. I figured out how to get it out to the guys. They never complained. They were always grateful. And my amazing father-in-law thought it was just the greatest thing ever. He would slide me cash to go to the grocery store. And one year for Christmas, he got me a beacon light for the top of my car so that they would know when I got to the field. It was a joke. He was very pleased with himself. I still have that light. But more of the story is, over the last 15 years, here I am, I'm still making meals for our farm crew, but my role has evolved into so much more than that because I had the confidence to put myself out there. At the time, I didn't realize what I was doing and that it was going to make such a profound difference in my role, but it really did give me the confidence, like, hey, I have a spot here, and even though I'm not maybe doing the manual labor, my role is important too. So Ryan and I together have really always had a team-based approach, and his dad fostered that. His dad started that with him when he was young, but into college especially, and when it was obvious that Ryan and I were going to be together for the long haul, I was involved in those conversations too. I have always had a seat at the table, even when I didn't know what was going on. There was a lot of times where I was part of things, I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about, but I'm here to listen, and I'm gonna try and learn. And the more times that I have put myself in that spot, the more comfortable I am with asking questions and being involved. So when we were both working full time off of the farm, his dad would make a point to schedule meetings with crop insurance, meetings with lenders, just different things that arise on the farm. He would do his best to schedule it at a time that worked for us, because he believed in empowering us as beginning farmers. Even though we weren't even technically part of the farm at that point, Ryan was just working for his dad. And so we knew that he believed in us from early on, and he wanted us to be successful, and he knew that the future success of his farm and his legacy was going to be on our shoulders someday. And so he really got the ball rolling with empowering us to feel good about making decisions and choices and things regarding the farm. I'll never forget our first operating loan that Ryan and I took out. I was in grad school and I was sitting at our kitchen table holding a baby, and he came in and he's like, I think we should get into cattle. I'm like, we can do that? Isn't your dad the farmer? Like, no. How do we do that? I was totally just dumbfounded. And needless to say, within a couple of weeks, we were sitting down with our lender, having conversations about getting our first operating loan. We brought cattle in, we still have cattle, and it's been a really great thing for our family. And again, I found a role, right? He was busy planting late at night or harvesting in the fall. I can feed, I can handle that. I can go check the water. I saw a problem, I figured out how I could solve it. I made myself a role. So slowly but surely gaining confidence. Everything was great, grand. We were starting to become more involved. We were farming our first tillable acres alongside his dad. We had this young family. Everything was great until it wasn't. Because that's the thing about adversity. We never know when it's going to be our turn, right? Good and bad things happen to all of us all the time. And what we do during the good helps prepare us for those times when things aren't so good. So we know 2020 was quite the year. And a lot of us had other things going on outside of whatever else was going on. And those things were magnified because of the pandemic. And we had a lot going on within our family and our farm at that time as well. So I had a baby in April of 2020. It was a wild time. And leading up to that day of having that baby, I went into a very unhealthy spiral of controlling literally everything I could try to control, because there was no controlling anything in the world around us at that point. And it's kind of set the foundation for a very long battle with postpartum anxiety that I worked through that led into a bunch of other things as the year progressed. And Things are great though. We figured it out by the end of the summer. Then I had to go back to work. I was still teaching at this point. Ryan's dad, unfortunately, was battling cancer, and his body was no longer responding to things the way it needed to be. It was harvest. We had a lot going on. Our plates were very full. We really started to crumble, wondering how much longer we could sustain what we were doing with working full time, taking care of all the things. How could we do it? And in that moment, we were really glad for the foundation and the times that his dad had poured into us to get us ready for this kind of adversity. So I want you to think about, how are you setting that foundation for those tough times? Because we don't know when they're going to happen to us. Okay? And having a team and having your board of directors all aware of what's going on is so important. So in January of 2021, we lost Ryan's dad, and it was really, really hard. We thought we knew what was going on with the farm. We thought we did, until he was gone, and we're like, oh my goodness. We know a lot, but there's a lot that he was shouldering that we didn't even understand, that we didn't know he had that weight on his shoulders. And so we decided together, like, okay, the only way through this is through it. So we need to keep going, because that's what his dad would have wanted. So we all have those stories. I call 2020 our shift, because that was really just our breaking point, and we can only go up from here. So we had stories that shape us into the people we are today. Some of them are really great stories. Some of them are really, really challenging stories. And hopefully there's more great stories than challenging. After his dad passed, we tried to make our old life continue to work for us, but by about March, we decided that Ryan working full-time in ag retail was not really conducive to running a farm full-time. And so he resigned from his job on Monday, and I resigned from teaching on Thursday. That was wild. It was scary. I taught until June though, like we had a little buffer there. But after leaving the classroom that final day, I had this, I struggled with who I was for a long time. What am I? Who am I? What is my job? Am I a stay-at-home mom? What do I do all day? How do I explain to people what it is that we as farmers do? And I have finally realized that I don't have to explain to anybody what I do, because the right people will understand. So since that moment in 2021, we have continued to move forward with our farm, really taking time to hone in on conversations about what we want our legacy to be, okay? His dad built, and his dad stepped into a really tough situation when he was young too. And we did not want to let him down, okay? But also we knew there were things we wanted to change, and change is okay. Change is really scary, change is hard, change is really intimidating. But on the other side of change, there's a lot of really good things too. So we've been talking about what we want our legacy to look like, how we want to involve our children. Right now it's Ryan and I. We're 34 years old, and we're the oldest generation on our 6th generation farm. It's a very wild position to be in. But we know that in 20 years, we're gonna have 4 kids that potentially want help or be part of it. Maybe only 1, I don't know, we can hope. But what are we setting as the norm for our farm? What kind of culture are we creating for our kids to grow and thrive here? We were adjusting to new roles and responsibilities and figuring out who is doing what in different times. I didn't know a lot about the farm still at this point, and I asked a lot of questions. And Ryan is a very patient soul and answered my questions even when I asked the same ones over and over again. But I also recognized more problems, right? Back to my simple formula. I recognize a problem, how can I solve it? labor shortage. I figured out how to drive the tractor. It was scary as heck, okay? But I can now confidently run grain cart, and that helps him a lot. But unfortunately, when I'm in the grain cart tractor, I can't also be making meals and taking care of our kids and all these other things. So it's this ripple effect. How can we adjust? I have always been very, very proud to be a farm wife. Okay, that is a title that I hold near and dear to my heart. But on our farm wife is equivalent to a farm partner. I am part of this with him. It's our farm, it's our family, it's our legacy, it's our business. It's not his, it's ours. We're a team. And that was something that we decided that's going to be a norm here. That's the culture that we're going to set for our farm. We've got our board of directors and everyone has a voice. And so I know that's not the way it is for every farm, but I just want to say that it's never too late to change. It's never too late to start including people. It's never too late to speak up that you want to be included. I get a lot of questions from women, particularly in my age range, that millennial generation, of how do I become more involved? I'm married into this farming family. I feel like I don't have a voice, but I want to be more involved. I just want to know what's going on. So, biggest thing is thinking about, what do you really want? Do you want to be involved in the daily grind outside, doing the manual labor? Do you want to be more involved inside, like helping with the books? Do you just want to be part of the conversations when the big conversations happen, so that you are aware of what's going on? That was my biggest thing, especially once his dad passed. I realized that if something happened to him, the farm was on me. And it was really important for me to understand what was happening with the numbers and things. I didn't ever want to be put in a position of vulnerability because I didn't understand what was happening in our farm. Someone that I really look up to as a mentor shared this quote with, how do I make this pointer point? This one? Oh, I'm not going to even try. This quote, love does not read minds. Okay? So you've been married to someone for years and years and years. You think you know, but love does not read minds. Don't ever assume anything. Because I might assume that he knows I want to be more involved, but he might assume that he doesn't want to burden me with asking me to be more involved. Maybe he wants me to be more involved. Okay, so we have to speak up. Ask questions and ask more questions. And keep asking those questions. There's no such thing as too many. Your perspective matters no matter how involved you are with the farm, right? So at the end of the day, no matter how many families you have tied into your farming operation, your perspective still matters, because at the end of the day, you're still part of the farm in some capacity, even if your name isn't signed on those dotted lines. Okay, the farm is still part of who you are. So you start with one thing, get really good at it. I think that can apply to everyone in the room, right? When we're learning new skills. Don't try to learn everything all at once. Try to pick a couple things that are most important and get really good at them. Don't worry about stereotypical roles. People think it's crazy sometimes that I'm out in the tractor, but then I also have like 2 kids in there with me. It's fine. I'm doing what needs to be done for our farm. And the biggest one would be to make sure you're planning together and dreaming together and having fun. And having fun is really important, because the farm is a very big part of your life, but it's not your whole life. It's important to have fun too. And so once you find that like synergy of, okay, I'm here, I'm at the farm, how can I find more joy in that? Give yourself a fun job title. It really throws people for a loop. Sometimes I say I'm the CEO of Ponwith headquarters, and people are like, what? I'm like, yeah, I run our family. Okay, that's my job. Put yourself out there. Make sure that you're doing things and not just thinking things in your head, because we can spend a lot of time in our heads and we can be more productive if we're actually physically out there doing something. Have the courage to try new things and fail epically. One of my last memories with my father-in-law was the year I was learning how to run grain cart, and I spilled an unknown amount of bushels on the ground next to a major highway, and he was out front waving his arms all around, and I'm like, I have no idea what that means. Can you please come and help me? And I could not figure out how to shut the PTO off in the auger. So it was fine. I figured it out. Haven't spilled that much since. No one yelled at me. We got the shovels out. We joked about who was buying a case of beer, and we got over it. And it still is a fun learning moment. And also, my daughter was with me in the cab, and I knew that however I chose to react was going to be something that she remembered. I very much have a, I don't get it, but I'm going to help you, right? So there's a lot of times where he'll be like calling me, do you want to come outside and figure something out with me? Okay. I go outside, and we figure it out. He usually knows what he's doing, but he just needs a separate set of hands. And I'm always willing to help him. Most of all, just embrace what brings you joy and shake off the rest. And that applies to everyone in this room, right? Farming is really, really stressful, but there's a lot of really beautiful things about farming that most of the population never gets to see. And so during those really, really hard times, during those long days during harvest, take a moment to really just be grateful and sit in gratitude of all the beauty that is around you that you get to be part of. So that is all I have for you today. And are there any comments or questions? Really just be brave and be proud of where you are as farmers and farm wives, farm partners, whatever your role is. Just be proud of it. That's all I got for you.